Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I'm recording it, so that way, yeah, I'll send it over to you. Okay.
Mira, este es el hijo de Elías. que
Okay.
también está
I got Natasha. Hi, Natasha.
simpático, ¿no? También.
¿Qué tal, Natasha? ¿Cómo está? ¿Me escuchas? Ok. Jair, ¿estás ahí? Ok. Ok, guys. ¿Qué hora es ahora? Son las... Buenas tardes, Jair. ¿Cómo estás?
Buenas tardes, señor Elías.
How are you, my friend?
Good, good. Aquí estoy,
Oye,
aquí
I'm gonna
escuchando
polish.
por acá. Aquí tengo un perrito que está haciendo un poco de ruido, pero lo voy a poner en mute para que no
Okay.
moleste, que queremos escuchar.
Yo te voy a enseñar un poco de inglés, ¿oíste?
That's perfect for me.
I'm
No problem.
gonna polish your English a
That's
little
perfect, my friend.
bit.
It's time, it's time.
Okay, I got my son on the other line. I don't know if you see him, Danny.
How's it
Yes,
going?
I saw him, yes.
Yeah, ese es mi hijo mayor.
That's good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
My partner in business and my oldest son.
That's great.
Yep. All right.
Congrats.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and begin with the video. El video, it's around 20 minutes, but I'm going to probably just, go over the most important parts of the video, and then I'll go over the forms that we need to use, from August 16th is when this thing takes place. Okay, and I'm going to go over the forms and stuff. Let me go over it. Can you see the YouTube video here, Danny?
Yeah, we see it.
The lady there that's about to talk?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right.
Think of conversation right now.
All right.
As you know,
Can you hear?
on March 15th,
Can you hear?
2020,
We hear. Yep. We
the
hear it.
National Association of Realtors announced a proposed settlement agreement to end class action litigation of claims brought on behalf of home sellers related to broker commissions. The settlement covered a number of crucial issues. Two of those issues have received a lot of attention in recent months, as these two issues have driven practice changes within our industry. NAR has set a deadline for members, multiple listing services, and boards covered by the settlement to incorporate those practice changes into their businesses no later than August 17, 2024. The two issues of note are, first, NAR has agreed to prohibit offers of compensation on the multiple listing service. There will continue to be many ways in which buyer brokers can continue to be compensated, including through offers of compensation communicated off the multiple listing service. But using the multiple listing service to communicate offers of compensation is no longer an option. And the settlement provides that multiple listing service participants working with buyers must enter into written buyer agreements prior to touring a home. It is the second issue of written buyer representation agreements that we will discuss today. Now let's talk written agreements. The settlement calls for written buyer agreements. The language of the settlement is very broad and it's designed to apply to all 50 states, but today we will personalize this to Florida. The terms of this buyer agreement are not specifically defined, but the settlement does give the required elements for written buyer agreements. The written agreement must include, 1, a specific and conspicuous disclosure of the amount or rate of compensation the participant will receive, or how this amount will be determined to the extent that the participant will receive compensation from any source. 2, the amount of compensation in a manner that is objectively ascertainable and not open-ended. 3, a term that prohibits the participant from receiving compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to in the written agreement with the buyer. And 4, a conspicuous statement that broker fees and commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. For more information on this, take a look at NAR's frequently asked question number 54. As we talk today, if I can refer you to a particular FAQ posted on the NAR site, I will do so. I find it is very helpful to know exactly where to find the source of this crucial information. These written agreements must be presented to and signed by buyers prior to touring a property. In the frequently asked questions published by NAR on facts.realtor, NAR explains that touring means when the buyer and/or the MLS participant or other agent at the direction of the MLS participant working with the buyer enters the house. This includes the MLS participant or other agent at the direction of the MLS participant working with the buyer, entering the home to provide a live virtual tour to a buyer not physically present. So yes, a virtual tour can count as touring a property, according to NAR's frequently asked question number 57. Okay, but how do I determine if I am working with a buyer? The working with language is intended to distinguish MLS participants who provide broker services to a buyer, such as identifying potential properties, arranging for the buyer to tour property, performing or facilitating negotiations on behalf of the buyer, presenting offers by a buyer or other services for the buyer, from the MLS participant who simply markets their services or just talks to a buyer at an open house, or by providing an unrepresented buyer access to a house they have listed. If the MLS participant is working only as an agent of the seller, then the participant is not working with the buyer. In that scenario, an agreement is not required because the participant is performing work for the seller and not the buyer. So now that I've told you what the settlement requires in a written agreement with the buyer, let me tell you what the settlement does not require. NAR policy does not dictate the type of relationship the professional has with the potential buyer. And by that, I mean agency relationships like transaction brokers or single agents. It does not dictate the term of the agreement. It can be a month, a day. It can be one house or a whole zip code. It does not cover the services to be provided. That's completely up to the parties. It can be a certain number of showings. It can include negotiations or presenting offers. And it does not dictate the compensation charge. Compensation is negotiable. It can be a flat fee, a percentage, or whatever rate the parties decide on. So as a part of complying with the settlement, the legal team at Florida Realtors work with the Presidential Advisory Group, various committees, the leadership team, and other members of our association to assist in identifying the preferences of our membership for amending existing forms and creating new forms. There were several forms already in existence that could be used between the buyer and the broker to comply with this written agreement. Today, we will focus on one of those forms, the exclusive buyer broker agreement. This is the form EBBA in the form Simplicity Library. Written buyer representation forms like the exclusive buyer broker agreement form are not new in Florida. This form has recently been updated to incorporate the settlement changes, but this form had a previous effective date of 2016. It has been around for years and has been used in thousands of transactions by your fellow realtors here in Florida. The requirements of the settlement will undoubtedly cause an increase in the use of this form in coming months. So what should you expect when using the exclusive buyer broker agreement form? Well, if you choose to use this form, first, you should go to the forms library to select the form. You will notice that the form has a version for each of the approved agency disclosure relationships in Florida. There is one for single agency, transaction broker, and the no brokerage option. Now, it is important to note that I said when you go to the forms library, it has always been important to use the most current version of the forms that we publish. And now more than ever, it is critically important that you do so. In the past, forms have changed for a variety of legal and practice-related reasons. But remember that the settlement requires certain mandatory disclosures that must be made in order to be covered by the settlement. We talked about those a few minutes ago, and it is critical that you ensure that you are using the most current version of the buyer broker agreement. So for the time being, make sure you go and pull those forms down from the forms library. Make sure you have the version of the document with the June 2024 revision date. Now, on to the document itself. For purposes of our discussion today, we will talk about the EBBA 7TB. That's the form number. That is the transaction broker version of the exclusive buyer broker agreement form. Now let's start at the top, paragraph 1 of the buyer broker agreement. Paragraph 1 sets forth the parties to this contract. And keep in mind that this is indeed a contract. The buyer is referred to as the consumer, a more generic term that you will see in most of our broker services agreements moving forward, to describe the person to whom the broker is providing services. Here, the consumer is the buyer, and potentially the buyer who becomes the lessee, but we'll talk about that a little later. The consumer and the broker, and by broker, it includes the agent of the broker assigned to work with the consumer. They state early on in paragraph 1 that they are creating an exclusive relationship. The consumer has granted the broker this exclusive right to work with and assist them in the purpose of locating and negotiating the acquisition of suitable property. This acquisition can happen in many ways, and they state that this can happen by the purchase, of course, of a property, but also by option, exchange, or even lease, as I mentioned earlier, in the case where a consumer evolves from a buyer to a lessee. Now, moving on to paragraph 2, the parties here decide how long they will work together by stating the term. There's a start date and a termination date to be filled in by the parties. For clarity, we specify that the termination ends at 11:59 p.m. One important issue to note about that term provision,
You guys can hear the video,
much
right?
like the language in our listing agreement.
You can hear the video, okay?
If the
Yeah, we
parties
hear it.
enter into a
Yes.
sell and purchase contract or other agreement to acquire property, that is the actual language contained in the agreement, the term will extend through the closing of that agreement. That brings us to paragraph 3, the property. This is the place for the parties to specify the type of property the consumer is interested in, or in other words, what is considered a suitable property. Now, this is the first place where the prior version of the buyer-broker agreement and the current version is noticeably different. The criteria have been shortened to only include types of property and location. Factors such as price have been removed from the new version. If you and the consumer wish to further define what is considered a suitable property, you would do so in paragraph 13 under other terms. Now, broker obligations is listed under paragraph 4 of the agreement. This paragraph has remained very similar to the previous version of this form. Under 4A, though, please note that the last point states that the broker will cooperate with real estate licensees and with the owner to complete the transaction, making it clear that there is cooperation that goes well beyond just money. 4B also states that the consumer understands that even if the broker is compensated by an owner or a real estate licensee who is working with an owner, such compensation does not compromise the broker's duty to the consumer. The agreement provides the consumer assurances that compensation from the seller or the listing broker will not nullify the obligation broker agrees to provide in this section. Moving on to paragraph 5. This paragraph sets forth consumer obligations. These are fairly straightforward activities performed by consumers during the transaction. Now, paragraph 6 provides for the parties to agree to an optional retainer. It is a non-refundable sum for services provided by the broker to the consumer. The agreement specifies that the sum is earned and payable upon execution of the agreement to help reinforce the non-refundable nature of the fee. Moving on to paragraph 7. This takes us to the heart of the settlement and how it impacts the agreement. The goal of this paragraph is to provide the parties with flexibility in how to structure compensation and to do so in a clear, objectively ascertainable way. We start with how compensation is earned. When during the term of the agreement, consumer contracts to acquire real property or defaults on a contract, compensation is earned. The form then states some pretty critical terms of compensation. First, the form clarifies that the compensation here is for services rendered to the consumer. In other words, the compensation outlined here is not for listing services on a property the buyer selects that is also listed by the broker. Those are services to the seller, not the buyer. Another critical issue addressed here is what happens if the seller or the listing broker agrees to pay this broker for services to this consumer. So for example, for bringing this buyer to a listing, this agreement states that the amount the seller or listing broker agrees to pay will reduce the amount the buyer agrees to pay in paragraph 7. So how do they define the amount to pay? The parties are able to fill in the blanks to the compensation section based on their agreement. It is very important to remember that the parties may elect to fill in multiple options. For instance, the parties may complete the purchase and the lease subsections if the buyer is not sure the financing will come through and they may need to lease prior to the purchase of the property. It is completely up to them. So let's look at each section. First is the purchase. The form allows for purchase or exchange compensation to be defined. In that section, the parties can fill in a dollar amount or a percentage, or they can fill in a dollar amount and a percentage plus a bonus amount. Again, it is completely up to the parties. But note that the fee is defined as payable, not later than the date of the closing. But the fee is earned regardless of the closing. If the consumer defaults on the sales contract and never closes, the fee may still be owed to the broker. The leasing and options sections are very similar. There are multiple options to define compensation, and it is specified that those fees are payable when the consumer enters into a lease purchase or an option to purchase. As you can see, there are many options to structure compensation, and additional space is given for the parties to enter other terms that are unique to their relationship. Maximum flexibility for compensation structure between the consumer and the broker has always been our goal. And in this post-settlement world, it is more important than ever. The last few paragraphs of the document cover some very interesting topics. Let's talk about the protection period and conditional termination. The protection period provides that the consumer will compensate broker if, within a specified number of days after the termination of the agreement, the consumer contracts to acquire any property which was called to consumers' attention by broker or any other person, or found by the consumer during the term of this agreement. However, the consumer's obligation to pay the broker's fee ceases upon the consumer entering into a good faith exclusive buyer-broker agreement with another broker after the termination date. The conditional termination language in paragraph 9 provides that at the consumer's request, the broker may agree to conditionally terminate this agreement. If the broker agrees to the conditional termination, the consumer must enter a written agreement with the broker terminating the agreement and setting forth the conditions of that termination, including the payment of a termination fee in the amount set forth in that agreement. If from the early termination date to the termination date plus any protection period, the consumer contracts to acquire any property, the broker may void the conditional termination, and the consumer would then be obligated to pay the fees stated in the compensation paragraph, minus any cancellation fee. So what happens when a dispute arises under this agreement? Well, the dispute resolution sections should be familiar language to you. It is substantially the same as the language in our listing agreements and many other forms in the Florida Realtors Form Simplicity Library. It allows the parties to litigate the matters pursuant to the laws of Florida, but it also allows the parties to initial the agreement and to opt in to arbitration as a way to resolve the disputes in order to avoid litigation. Much like the dispute process in our listing agreements, paragraph 11 allows the brokers to assign this buyer-broker agreement and states that the document is binding on heirs, personal representatives, successors, and assigns. Paragraph 12 addresses the brokerage relationship set forth in statute. There is so much chatter about the impact of the settlement on the transaction broker relationship. I would encourage you to remember Contractual obligations as defined in a buyer-broker agreement are not necessarily the same as fiduciary responsibilities under statute. I look forward to providing additional resources specific to that topic in the near future. But for now, please remember that the settlement does not prohibit the transaction brokerage relationship. The other terms section in paragraph 13 allows the parties to write in any special aspects of their relationship in this section of the agreement. And finally, paragraph 14 contains a number of very important provisions. Bolded and underlined is language that is required by the settlement. The agreement states that brokerage commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. Also spelled out is the requirement to state that the broker may not receive compensation from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed with the consumer. The last sentence is very important language, and it states that the consumer agrees that the broker may receive a separate amount of compensation from the owner of the property for services rendered to the owners as listing broker. This is to make it clear that the consumer may ultimately select a listing that the broker has, and that the broker may be paid a listing fee for working with the seller. This is to ensure the type of transparency and informed decision-making that the settlement wants for the consumer. Now, one last thing about the form. The form can be signed by the broker or an authorized agent of the broker. This may be a really good time for brokerages to give some thought for how agents are authorized to complete and sign forms, maybe as a part of your independent contractor agreement or your policy and procedures manual. Ultimately, the latest version of the buyer-broker agreement is not dramatically different from previous versions. The document does serve the purpose of incorporating the elements of the settlement while providing maximum flexibility for the parties to structure their agreement. Now, undoubtedly, you have questions. Having the documents that set out the terms of the settlement is one thing. Knowing how and when to use those documents is completely different. Starting today and in the coming weeks, we will work hard to answer those questions for you. Some of those questions we can answer here at Florida Realtors, and some of those questions we must seek answers from NAR. But we will diligently pursue the information as well as continue to develop and release forms and other tools that you need to successfully make this pivot. So let's get started with some of those questions that I know you need answers to.
Okay, guys. Well, this went over, you know, the most important document, which is the exclusive buyer agreement. Okay. First of all, let me tell you that the exclusive buyer agreement, this form, make sure that you use the transaction broker form. Okay. Don't use the single agent, because then you're going to be put into a fiduciary relationship with your buyer. You don't want that. Okay, you want to use the form. It's got to say here on the bottom, you know, the current form, it's on your form simplicity 2024. And on the number 12, it's going to say brokerage relationship. Broker will in fact be a transaction broker in the transaction. Okay, that's important. Also, the retainer. Okay, let's talk about the retainer. You don't need to get a retainer from your buyer. Okay, it's optional. So if the buyer doesn't want to give you a retainer, you don't have to. All right. Number 7, where it says how much shall we put as a brokerage commission? Okay, our office policy is 6%. Okay, I would always put there, number 7, I would put 3%, okay? You know why? Because what if you put 2% or 2.5%, and the listing broker has an agreement that the seller will pay the buyer's broker 3%. So you're automatically limited to collect 2.5%. Do you understand? So you want to put 3% there, okay? If you get 2.5%, you can negotiate the difference. You can tell your buyer, hey, don't worry about the 0.5%. Okay. If the if the listing broker pays you 2%, you can waive the 1% that you charge your buyer, or you can charge your buyer 1%. But honestly, I don't think a buyer is going to pay any of this. Okay. I don't think a buyer in today's market is going to pay us a commission to purchase a home. It's hard enough saving enough for a down payment, right? And so, more than likely, but you got to explain to your buyer. You say, look, this is a conditional agreement. This is conditioned upon the seller, having me negotiate with the seller's broker, the commission. You can tell the buyer so he won't get scared. You're not going to owe me a commission unless we can negotiate this with the seller. You follow what I'm saying? So, and this also gives you a commitment on the part of the buyer. Because if you have a buyer, you must have this signed. So every buyer, Danny and Natasha, every buyer that you come across is going to have to sign this agreement. Okay. Otherwise, you as a selling broker are not going to be entitled to a commission. All right. So buyers after August 17th, they're going to be made aware of this. So every buyer is going to need to sign this. When you get a call from a buyer on your listing, okay, what's the most important question to ask the buyer? Danny, if you get a buyer calling you on your listing,
Are they working with another realtor?
do they have a written buyer agreement with a buyer, exclusive agreement? Okay. If that's the case, you want to refer that buyer to the realtor. You don't want to further work with him. I mean, you want to be nice. You don't want to tell him, hey, I can't work with you. But you tell him, look, if you have an exclusive relationship, do you have a signed exclusive? Remember, it's got to be signed. Okay. If it's not signed, if it's not in writing, that buyer does not have an exclusive relationship with any realtor. Okay. Now, you get a call on your listing. Okay. When you meet the buyer, or right before you meet, you explain to the buyer that you have to have this form signed on this property only, because the buyer may not want to commit to you. He may be new. He may not, know you very well. So he may not be committed to sign an exclusive buyer agreement for 90 days. Right. So what you're going to do is you're going to email the buyer the form with the property address that you're going to show. Okay. If it's your listing, you're going to put your listing there. Okay. Your address. So that's exclusive to your listing. And that protects you in that if you show the property to that buyer, okay, and that buyer goes to another realtor to present the offer, you have the right to the commission, not the other broker. Okay. You understand? So that's, that's important. This form has to be signed, by the buyer, before you show the property. I'm going to go to my notes here that I took, because I know you got a bunch of questions, a bunch of questions. Let me go here to, let's see here. I had some notes here on, okay, the settlement right here, upcoming. Yeah, here we go. Let me do a share screen. Okay, do you see these notes here? It says NAR navigating upcoming practice. Do you see that?
Yep, we see it.
Okay.
You're still sharing.
Yeah, this is some of the questions that we had. Or that I had actually, let me, when they were having, when they were having the presentation, okay? Okay, number one, what other practice changes? Okay, after March, August 16th, okay, August 17th, actually, you must have this written representation agreement. Now, do you have to have it? Danny, you do a lot of open houses, okay? Do you have to have this agreement signed by a customer that goes into your open house?
No, she just explained, because you're
Correct.
still working for the seller, you don't have to have it signed
Correct.
during an open house.
Right, but if you, now, if you develop a relationship with that buyer, right? And you start, he says, well, look, Danny, I like you, I like working with you, can you help me with other properties? Okay,
Then you have to get it signed for sure.
then you have to get it signed. And if he wants to buy your property, okay, you got to get it signed for your property, along with the purchase agreement. Okay, but marketing wise, you don't have to, your buyers that call you on Zillow, you don't have to have this agreement, unless you're working with the buyer. That's why you want to ask them, do you have a relationship with another broker? I would include a written relationship, because if you don't have a written relationship, you have nothing. Okay, look, it says you must have a written representation agreement. Okay, now, what does this not apply for? This doesn't apply for commercial properties. Okay, this doesn't apply to multifamily properties. All right, so if you're selling a multifamily, a duplex, fourplex, this doesn't apply. But I would get it signed anyway, but according to the settlement, that this doesn't apply. Okay, the settlement was 418 million. The NAR is denying any wrongdoing, but they wanted to make the settlement to avoid any further litigation. Okay, and then going below here, okay, let's see, we got written agreement. Okay, let's see here. Written buyer agreement will be required. Okay, when you get a new listing from now on, okay, you need, along with, in the listing agreement, the new one, it's gonna specify how much the seller is willing to pay the broker. And you always want to put, if possible, you want to put that the seller is going to pay the selling broker, not that you're going to pay the selling broker. Okay, because that way, if you put that the seller is going to pay the selling broker, it will appear on your settlement statement as the seller paying half of or whatever the commission they agree to pay the buyer's broker. If you agree to pay the buyer's broker, you're going to get you're going to get the full commission, and then you have to cut a check for whatever amount it is, and then you have to do a lot of bookkeeping. You gotta do a 1099 to the broker that you wrote the commission to, or I have to, because I'm the broker. But either way, I can do it if we have to. But the best way to do it is that the broker, the seller's broker, will pay the buyer's representative, a commission. Okay. Let's see what else I can tell you here. Okay, you cannot put any of this on showing time or on the MLS. You cannot indicate any commission paid agreement on the MLS or on showing time. That's a violation. And the MLS will be on top of you. If they see anything on an attach, you cannot attach this form. You cannot attach the compensation agreement here to the MLS. Okay, that's a violation. Now, what you can do is you can ask the broker that you're showing the property, ask them, first of all, do you have a compensation agreement for the buyer's broker? Right? You get it by email, tell them to send you an email. And if it was me, when you present the contract, as the buyer's broker, I would put that commission on the contract. Okay, to make sure, and I would also ask for this, you know, for the buyer's compensation agreement. But always put your compensation on the contract. Okay, because if you don't get this compensation agreement signed by the seller, by the other broker, you might be working for nothing. But if you have your compensation on the sales contract, then the title company knows that they have to pay you. You follow what I'm saying? Okay. I heard that the tenant is not required to have a written agreement. All right. If you're working with a tenant, you don't have to worry about this. Okay. Email the flyers. There's no need to get a buyer's agreement. You can put on your flyers the amount of the commission. You can put on your real estate sign that you're paying the buyer's broker, that the seller's paying the buyer's broker 2.5% or 3%. That could be displayed on the sign or on the flyer, or you can display it on the you can display the commission on your website if you have a website. Okay, all your listings. Okay. I asked a couple of questions here. Okay. I asked the one of the attorneys that can you put your commission on the contract? Okay. And the answer to that question was yes. Okay. Okay. You can put your commission on the contract. A standard practice 1616 prohibits a realtor from attempting to modify the terms of a listing agreement through the terms of an offer because the listing agreement is a contractual matter between seller and buyer. However, the seller and the listing broker may independently choose to amend the listing agreement or to take any action that they deem appropriate. All right, but you can put your commission on the contract, and I would to protect yourself. Danny, you know, you and I that have listings already, we need to, after the 16th, we need to modify our listings, and we have to have the seller sign this modification to compensation agreement. Okay, this indicates that the seller is required to the seller is going to be required to pay the buyer's broker, even though it's on the listing agreement. Okay, you got to have this as an addendum to your listing agreement. Now, if you have any current listings, I would have this in the file, because if we ever have an audit, the auditor is going to ask me for the file, and then he's going to ask me for this. Do you have this addendum? Okay, on your existing listing. All right.
Yeah.
Now, after August the 17th, no longer there will be a commission paid to the buyer's broker. We will not see that. Okay.
Elías,
¿Tienes alguna pregunta? Any questions?
Elías, ¿me escuchas?
Ya, te escucho.
Ok, yo tengo un rental listing
Ya,
on MLS.
ya.
Due-
Okay.
Tengo que cambiarlo antes del 17.
No, the rental listings don't apply.
No.
Nope, not that I
Okay.
know of. When you're working with a lease, I would do it anyway, because that commission on your rental listing is going to go away. So
Oh,
if I were you, I'd do this anyway. Okay, and I'd have
Okay.
your seller, e-sign the agreement. Okay, pero no puedes poner esto en el MLS. You cannot put this on the MLS.
pero yo tengo un listing puesto en el MLS de renta.
Tranquilo.
Que ya tiene.
Después de agosto 17, after August the 17th, the commission that the seller agreed to pay the buyer's broker is going to be gone. So the
Okay.
broker that calls you on that listing is going to ask you what commission are you paying, and they may ask you for this agreement. So you're going to send them the modification, this agreement here. That's why you should have it in the file. Okay.
Okay.
Y acuérdate que you can't have this on the attachment for MLS. Okay. Y at showing time, you can't answer the realtor. If the realtor tells you how much commission you're paying on the showing time, you can't respond to that. Okay.
Okay.
You cannot respond to anything on showing time is directly connected to the MLS.
Okay.
Okay, it's basically, you know, we're still gonna get our commission, guys. Okay, it's just a little more paperwork, and this is really nothing to worry about. Just make sure that if you have a buyer, you know, make sure that they don't have an agreement with another broker, because if they do, then they're wasting your time. You know, and you don't have to make, you know, you can have an exclusive relationship only to the property that you're showing, not to every property. You understand? Or I would put, I mean, if you had a good relationship with your buyer, this is going to work with you in your favor, because the buyer is always going to use you for the broker. They're going to go to you, you know, because you have the agreement in place.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, you have to have the agreement, Nadi, before you show the property.
Okay.
Okay, if you show that property and you don't have an agreement, and the seller, let's say, refuses, don't show the property unless you know that that the listing broker is paying you a commission.
Of course.
But you need to have that in writing.
Of
And
course.
you know what I would do?
I'm not gonna work for nothing.
Yeah, I would ask the broker to send me an email telling me how much they're gonna pay. Okay,
Okay.
so that basically, yeah. Hey, I see Mario on the line. How you doing, Mario?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm over here on the beach enjoying the sun and the.
Good for you.
No,
Good for
actually,
you.
I'm at
That's
home.
hard of living.
I'm at home, man.
Oh, okay. Well, you fooled me.
Yeah. Well,
And
did
he must
you
be on the West
understand?
Coast. So,
Yeah, I know it fools people. I know, but I'm
yeah, I
actually
see
here
the
at
sun
home.
going down. I said, oh, he must be in
Yeah.
Siesta Key or somewhere like that.
Well, no, that's a picture of a picture I took on the 7 Mile Bridge in Marathon.
Oh, okay.
It's beautiful. Danny's going up there with his family this weekend.
Good. ¿Cómo está, Natasha? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Estoy aquí un poco aislado, pero you know, I'm in the COVID mode, but I'm doing good.
Good for you. Good for
I'm
you.
working, you know, we're working from home, and thank God that we have technology, and you know, I'm doing a lot of research and studying that I never had before, time that I had before.
Yeah, well, you got time for it now. And that's good.
Yeah,
You take it.
man. Yeah. No, I got help. You know, I got you guys to help me, Danny, Natasha, you know, all the associates there that are helping me out. So I got Danny on the line, my son.
I saw him. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Danny, if you have any
How's it going,
commercial
Mario?
deals, this is the
How
man
are
you
you?
got to talk to. Mario Block.
Good. Nice to meet you,
Velocity
man.
Mortgage. He does no income commercial. So
Yes,
any
sir.
deals you may have, he's the man. Okay, he's the man.
Gotcha.
So,
Sure.
and one big niche that he has, Danny, is that if you have a deal where let's say it's a commercial deal and your buyer needs they normally need 25 to 30% down, right? But let's say your buyer only has 10% down, a Velocity Mortgage will accept a second mortgage for the difference from the seller. So your buyer can come in with 10 or 15% down, and the other 15% can be seller held.
Yes, sir.
No other commercial lender does that.
Nice.
Yes, sir.
that's-
We've already closed multiple deals with
Yep.
yeah,
Well, we
with
closed a bunch of them last year, and
yeah,
this,
yeah, bunch.
yeah. That's because a lot of these commercial properties, you know, the investors don't have the full down payment. You know, let's say you're selling a warehouse, Danny, and they don't have the 30% down, but the buyer has 10% down, right? And if you can negotiate the seller to take back a second mortgage of 20% down, Velocity Mortgage will accept that.
Yeah, and the good thing, one good thing about that one pointer is that because they didn't receive that money, they don't pay capital gains on that money.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, because it's a loan.
It's a loan,
You
exactly.
don't pay capital gains on a loan. Right. You got it. And there's a lot of niches that they have, Danny. They got one where you don't have to source your money, the down payment, you know, for the commercial property. When I talk commercial, I'm talking commercial, multifamily, and even single family.
Right, investment.
Investment, there has to be investment. It's not, you know, owner occupied. They got a
Unless,
great,
unless it's a like a warehouse or what we call traditional two, which is a
Correct.
warehouse, retail, commercial condo.
right,
Then most of the ones that we do are owner occupied, and
Right.
it's great. It's a great SBA. It's great for SBA fallout.
right,
The only income that we require is just the P&L.
Right.
And their LLC or business license, and that's the end of it. And all the underwriters are looking for is
Yeah.
that they show profit on the P&L. That's it.
okay, perfect. And you
And
can have your
to be
accountant
self-prepared.
do the P&L.
Yeah.
Excellent. And source of funds, you don't have, all you have to have is money in the bank for 2 days, right? Or something like that?
No. You could transfer the money this afternoon and submit a bank statement showing that the money's available in the borrower's account,
Okay,
and the underwriters will sign off on it. It's no seasoning at all. We don't care where the money comes from, how long you've had it, as long as it's in the borrower's.
got it.
But-
Got it. And they also have a cool flip program where if you have an investor that wants to flip a property, they'll do the loan at 80% or 85. If they have experience, I think they'll go to 85%.
Yes, you got it right.
If they have experience, they go to 85%. If they don't, they're limited to 80%, but still they'll finance the kind of like a construction loan. They'll finance the remodeling cost of the home.
Right, the rehab loan. Yeah, absolutely.
Rehab. Yep.
Yeah.
So all your buyer has to come in with is 20%, and Velocity will finance the repairs.
Right. I know those programs, you have to have a 650 score,
Yeah,
but on the permanent ones,
yeah,
on the 30-year ones, the flex term
yeah,
or the fast 50, what we call the fast 50,
yeah.
it's actually the fast 50. There's no more minimum credit score. So even
Okay.
if you have scores in the 500, we have a loan. We can structure a loan. Anything less than 600,
All
it's
right.
a 50% LTV, but we wouldn't be able to help these people out in the past.
Right.
Now we're closing a lot of loans. People with equity are coming around to refinance.
Yeah.
Their scores aren't that good, and we
Right.
can help them.
And Danny, Natasha, this is a 30-year mortgage. It's not a hard equity loan. So, and if the flip, you know, the investor wants to flip the property, they can hold on to it and refinance it with Velocity and just keep it if they want to.
Right.
Right, Mario?
Yeah.
After they fix it, they can just refi it, correct?
They're right. They can either list it or refinance,
Okay.
or keep it for the cash flow.
And
Yes, sir.
meanwhile, they'll be paying interest only on the credit line, on the mortgage.
On the temporary loan, it's
Got it.
interest only. Yes, sir.
Okay,
No
got it.
prepayment penalty on those loans.
Got it. Oh, good news, guys. The rates, if you have anybody that's purchased a home in from 2022 to 2024, get on the phone with them because we got rates right now, FHA 5.5%.
Wow.
And if they have an FHA mortgage, all right, we can do what they call a streamline refi. What does that mean? No credit, no appraisal. Okay.
Wow.
No credit, no appraisal. We can do a streamline and still get paid on the loan.
Wow.
So
That's rate and
5.5%.
term, right? Rate and term.
Rates are going down, my friend.
That streamline is rate and term though, right?
It's yeah, rate and term. Rate and term streamline. And for VAs, you got the same thing. Okay. So if you have any loans like that, you know, Mario, that you know of, send them my way.
I sure will.
Okay. And the you know, reverse mortgages too. You know, we do reverse mortgages. We do well, basically, you know, we do everything. we have every loan you know, out there in the market.
Right. That's good.
So but listen, pertaining to what we talked about, this new you know, buyer representation and NAR settlement, do you understand basically, you know, why it came about and what needs to be done? Everybody aware of what we need to do?
Yes.
Yes.
Nadia, you understand everything?
Yes.
It's not any major, I mean, it's a major change, but you know what? I think it's gonna protect you as the buyer's broker more than before. Because how many times did we show properties or buyers calling us and they're working with 10 other brokers? Right?
Well,
And
Right.
now if you have a buyer, you know, you're gonna work with a serious buyer. I hate working with buyers. I don't know about you guys. But there's a saying, you know, buyers are liars, right? But listen, listings, man, you gotta, like Danny is racking it up. Danny, my son, his success has been all centered around listings. Okay, so, you know, market for those listings, okay? You got the listing, buddy, and you got the control. All right,
mhm.
doesn't mean that, you know, you're not gonna work with buyers, because you may have a good buyer, you know? Natasha, for example, Natty, she has 2 or 3 or 4 very, very good buyer investors that they believe in her, that they trust her, and whatever they buy, they go with her. So that buyer would not have a problem signing an agreement with her, you know? And you know, the buyer makes the buyer understand that that they're not, you know, the amount that that's on that agreement is going to be paid by the seller, you know. But remember, you don't want to put too lower of a commission on your buyer broker agreement, because if the other broker pays us 3% and you have 2.5% or 2%, you can't charge more than 2%. You understand, Nadi? So,
Bueno, esa es la parte que no entiendo mucho.
bueno, en el agreement pon 3%, ya está, put 3%.
3%.
3%. Entonces, si el vendedor te paga el 2.5%,
Mhm.
le perdonas al buyer el 0.5%.
Ah, ya.
Okay? Because
Yeah,
you know, no buyer out
Gotcha.
there, Mario, is going to come up with your commission, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah,
Gotcha.
you make it with the 3.5%.
They have a hard time coming up with a 3.5%, you know?
That's
So,
Yeah.
correct.
listen, man, do
Okay.
you guys have any questions? We're about finished. Any questions that you have? Danny, any questions that you have? We got Mario.
No, you answered most of them that came up. That was the first thing I heard was, yeah, minimum, we have to put 3% so that,
Yeah,
you know, we don't get paid less than what we have.
Right.
Now, are we gonna have to send this to the title company or to a listing agent? Because how would they know if we put 2%?
well, first of all, you're gonna ask them how much they pay, right? And then whatever they pay, if your agreement says 3% and then they pay you 2%, you can agree with your buyer to 2%. Okay,
Right, but then the listing agent now, as a buyer agent,
the listing
you never
agent,
say to the listing agent, let me see your listing agreement. So
no,
the listing agent now could say, let me see your buyer agreement to see what you agreed to get paid from the buyer.
they could, but you're not under obligation. You're not under legal obligation to send them a copy of it.
Right.
You are
Oh.
under legal obligation. He's under legal obligation to tell you how much his client is paying you. And if you get an email, you don't have to have this form. You might want to ask him, or can you send me a copy of your compensation agreement? You know, but they say that an email is good enough. So if the broker sends you an email, hey, my client is willing to pay you 2.5%, you know, you can take it at face value. All right, but I would put that amount on your contract, on your offer.
Yeah, on the purchase contract, for sure.
Always.
No, we just have to know how to explain it. I mean, I had this conversation today with a seller,
Yeah.
and they don't know what's going on.
No, they're not.
The
gonna know
seller
what to do.
said, "Oh, I heard that now the buyers are paying all the commission."
Yeah.
I said, "Whoa, that's not what's
They're
happening."
confused, yeah.
So I had to
You gotta
explain.
explain to them, that the buyer is not gonna be expected to pay the commission. They barely can have enough money for the down payment. And if the seller is not obligated to pay any commission. But what's that gonna happen to the marketability of his house?
Right.
You as a professional, you have to explain to the seller, look, we want to get the highest and best price for your home. In order to get the best price, the highest and best price is to offer your home in the MLS, number one, and offer a buyer's broker commission. You're not going to get a buyer's broker showing your house when he's not going to get paid. you know?
Yeah.
That's
Or,
correct.
or agree on a commission to you. Let's say, I mean, usually, sellers have agreed, our office policy is 6%, right? But let's say, you know, you come across one that can pay 5%. You know, which is okay with me, 5%. I wouldn't take 1%, I wouldn't take 2%. All right, minimum that I would take is 5%. Then out of that 5%, you say, okay, well, if we have a buyer broker come in, we'll pay him 2.5%. Okay, and then you get that in writing from the, you know, it's you negotiate it with the seller. Now, the seller could tell you, no, Danny, I don't want to pay more than 1%. Okay, well, that's fine. Then, you know, but what's your commission? Your commission should be 5. Don't, you know, try to negotiate you're telling them our office policy is a minimum of 5%. Because, you know, now the sellers are going to think, well, if the commission is 6%, now I only have to pay you 3%,
Right.
which, yeah, you can accept 3%. But if you accept 3%, you know, then you're going to have to give half of your 3% to the other broker. What's that going to leave us?
Nothing.
So you're going to tell them, look, our office policy is 5%. No, our office policy is 6%. You know, but it's negotiable. Okay, I can, if the purchase price is over 500, 600,000, you know, you can negotiate it to 5%. Okay, but don't, you know, don't work for nothing, guys. All right, don't work for
Uh-huh.
nothing. So, okay, well, we're done. Look, if you have any questions, call me, let me know. And one last thing, okay? When you go to the MLS, this is important for all you guys that are on MLS, Danny, Natasha. I have the MLS here, right here. Okay, let me show you something. Oh, wait a minute. Form Simplicity right here. Yeah. Okay. Okay, this is my Form Simplicity. Okay, let me share it with you here. Can you see the Form Simplicity here, Danny?
Yeah.
Okay. I got form packages here. If you go to blank forms, right? And then
Yeah.
what you got to do, go to blank forms and then you go to you see where it says form packages right there?
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have to invent anything, okay? If you have a contract, a buyer contract right here, you just hit there and you'll have all the forms that you need for your buyer contract. See? You have your as-is residential contract package. You don't need the coronavirus thing, HOA community disclosure. If it's a community, you got your FHA addendum. You know, I even put compensation agreement. So it's in there. Everything that you need is in there. You don't have to invent the wheel. Okay, energy efficient brochure, I don't use that. Exclusive buyer brokerage agreement, transaction broker. Why did I put that in there? If you have a listing and it's your buyer and you have a buyer for your listing, you got to have that in the file.
Yeah.
Okay. Seller's property disclosure for residential. Okay. That's the purchase. Now you want to go to listing. Okay. You go here. Okay. Form packages. Okay. Then you go all the way down. You see where it says, Miami Realtors residential listing. You open that up. These are all your listing forms, okay? And they're all, acuérdate que we are transaction brokers, okay? The listing has to be transaction broker. All right, it's all there. We have the seller property disclosure, the lead-based paint disclosure, the seller, if it's a condo, you got the condo seller disclosure, compensation agreement. Again, I got the compensation agreement here, which is this form here, which you guys know about. And the modification, if you have an existing listing, we need this, okay? Like I only have one listing right now, duplex. I got to get this. Well, maybe I don't have to because it's a 2-family. But anyway, I'm gonna get it anyway. This modifies your existing listing agreement, Danny. Okay, so like, yeah, I know you have several listings that you got prior to August 17th. So you're gonna need this in the file, okay? Just send it to them, and tell them they need to sign it, okay? Like you're listing in Hollywood. Okay, because no longer are they gonna show that commission being paid to the broker, remember, on MLS. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, guys, but I want you to know that the packages are already done for you here on your Form Simplicity. And
Okay.
if you need me to review a contract, you don't have to send it to me. Just call me and say, oh, Leah, go on Form Simplicity and review my contract, please, before I submit it. And I, as your broker, you know, my responsibility is to look at it for you. Okay? We don't want you to get into any trouble. Or if you're unsure, Natty, about something, I'll look at it for you before you send it over. Okay? All right, guys, we're finished. Preguntas, questions?
No.
Any further questions that you may have?
No, man, nothing else. Everything was answered.
Okay, man. All right, man. Well, listen, I'm gonna stop the share and let me go back and to the ocean here that I'm a little hot. All right.
You got still fishing out there.
I'm looking forward, listen, I'm looking forward to being out in the ocean by the end of the year. All
Ah,
right.
it's beautiful.
But no, hey, I'm a new man.
Good for you. That's great.
Yeah, man. No, I feel
Praise
great. Thank God. Praise God. And if it wasn't for God, I don't know, man. God does things that are impossible.
That's right. Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Jireh,
That's
Jehovah
right,
Rapha.
man. Thanks for your prayers. Okay.
Amen.
I'm here because of your prayers. Okay. And
Hallelujah.
my faith.
Right,
But I'll be
right.
back. I'll be back, guys. You know, I feel
Okay, good. We'll stay
great.
in touch.
Yeah, I'm a newborn baby. So I just
That's
gotta watch out for the next 6 months.
good, good. Take care of
But
yourself. That's
I'll be
good.
back into it, man. All right, guys.
Yeah, I'll be in touch.
Hey, you guys take care of yourself.
Yeah,
Okay,
bye,
Danny.
Natasha. Bye, Danny.
All right,
Good
guys.
night, everybody.
Danny, have a good trip to the
All right,
Keys.
guys.
Catch me some fish, all right?
All right, man.
I got a fish fryer that I'm dying, me and my wife are dying for some fish. Okay? But with one condition. Please clean them for me.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
No problem. No
Bueno,
problem.
oye, hasta luego. Take
All
care.
right, guys.
All
All
right,
right,
man.
take care, guys. Everybody, good night.
God
Good
bless
night.
you guys. All right. Bye-bye.
All right, man.